curiosity when they came to the Capitol with their presentation, knowing Mili Lani's strong activism in the past, and how we've matured and education and just having the experience of a native-to-native model in New Zealand working for them. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Mili Lani Trask of Innovations Development Group Incorporated, or RDG. Mili Lani is a cultural heritage and intellectual property attorney who provides strategic direction and assistance in helping IDG to promulgate a native-to-native model for economic development. This methodology ensures protective mechanisms throughout development to maintain and support cultural preservation while assuring an equitable sharing of benefits that arise from development initiatives. She also advocates for providing the right tools and support to help Indigenous peoples attain basic needs, education and training, and affordable shelter as they pursue appropriate development. With IDG's expansion into pursuits focusing on renewable energy resources and the drive to develop alternative sources, including geothermal energy, Mili Lani's work helps to approach projects in a way that is culturally sensitive and enables Indigenous peoples to maintain cultures and adapt positively to the needs of changing times. She is actively engaged presently in advancing IDG's New Zealand geothermal project initiatives, helping to ensure appropriate mentoring and training programs are in place for local youth. Let's welcome Mili Lani Trask.
By thanking Senator Pohai, who from the very first that we presented to the legislature has been working to bring this about. And she does it because her constituents in Waimanalo, Hawaiian homelands, Kailua, Lanikai, in this area have asked her to do this. Thank you so much, Senator, for your support. We have these little cards on the table next door. If you wish to have the contact information for the Innovations Development Group, please pick one up. Also, I wanted to ask you, if you have the time, please get a copy of our survey. Please make the time to fill it out. In our state, there is no data available on the opinions of people who own geothermal resources as to how they would like to see it developed, whether they would like to see it developed or not. So we have finally begun this process, and communities in our workshops in Kona, Hilo, Maui, Waimea, and Kona have already started the process, and we thank our labor unions on Big Island for also assisting in the survey. The data we will present to our senators, and also our geothermal working group from the Big Island, Richard Ha and Wally Ichibashi. I am a consultant to the Indigenous Development Group. I have a little one-woman business called Indigenous Consultants. And for many years, I have worked with other Hawaiians who call ourselves Indigenous Innovations Development Group. Our commitment has been to work for the development of renewable energy in the Pacific region and globally, to assist Indigenous peoples, to facilitate the meaningful development of their resources to their benefit in ways that are clean, sustainable, socially responsible, and in ways that bring back direct and real benefits to the people who need that energy. Very happy to be here. There are many members of our IDG team who are here, and when we have the break, we will all be over at the display to take any of the questions. Number one, we begin with who we are. We don't begin with any kind of disclaimer. When we speak, we say what is the truth. Our team is primarily Hawaii born and raised. Patricia Brown is here. She's our CEO. She has many years of working with the state. She's been on the Governor's Commission on the Status of Women, and right now working with Hawaiian Homestead. Lee Irwin is a CPA. He's one of the principals of Irwin, Kadena, and Lau, They are one of the top 3 CPA firms in Hawaii. Their background is not only local and national, but international business as well. He serves the IBG team as the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer. Cy Bridges is our cultural advisor. He is a renowned Hawaiian kumuhula. He is recognized as the finest genealogist in all of the Pacific region. He is married to a Maori girl. He has been a judge of the Merry Monarch for many years, and he comes on the IBG team because of this knowledge and his commitment to ensure the preservation and protection of the precious cultural heritage of our people and all indigenous peoples. I'm Denny Nani. I'm a United Nations human rights expert, and for many years I've worked there and now with our local team to develop ways to address the development of indigenous resources in a way that does not violate the human rights of our peoples, but rather honors it. Kenny Irwin is Lee's son. Lee is a Korean. He's married to a Hawaiian girl. This is his son. Lee Irwin graduated at the top of his class from MIT, was for many years the only Hawaiian on Wall Street, serving there in asset valuation. He continues to reside on the continent. Robbie Cabral is our senior business advisor. Robbie is here. And when I say that, a large part of the work that we do is attributable to her work and Lee's work. You can understand it because asset valuation, raising the capital, hard to raise $225 million for a 50-megawatt plant. My area of oversight is protection of cultural resources and designing a community benefit package for the community. Their area is the difficult part of raising the funds, doing the financial structuring, and bringing in all the partners from wherever they are. Because we will have the best for indigenous peoples. We will have the best for Hawaii. Hululensi is a Hawaiian woman who has worked for many years. She's been with A&B, she's been with the county. She is the mother of Nakua Makua, who just won Album of the Year. And she, of course, is a hula kumu and also a great entertainer. Patricia Medina Talbert now moves home. She is the only Hawaiian woman ever to be elevated to a superior court judgeship on the continent, where she served for many years as in New Jersey as Superior Court Justice. Now she comes home to assist us. She's a Medina girl from Maui. Rick Medina is her uncle. Luella Lovell is a Maori sister and an excellent attorney who deals with national and international business, serves many of the Maori trusts, has a very extensive background in negotiating for Maoris with regards to development, not only of geothermal, but OTEC and other sources, especially hydropower, which is developed in New Zealand. And finally, Dr. Sadiq Zarub, he is our senior science advisor. He fled the regime of Mr. Saddam Hussein and found refuge with the government of New Zealand. He is the man who wrote the textbook for engineers who work on geothermal development. He is not only our advisor, but he is a professor at the University of Auckland and is working with us to design a program there so that indigenous peoples who wish to learn how to manage their resources can come and get a degree. Already there are many Maori, men and women, both, who are in this program. Here are our other partners. We have the IBG team, which is a developer. It brings in the money and the other partners. Our two science partners who we work with in Hawaii, SKM and GNS. Remember those names. Satisfy yourself by going to the internet and looking it up. Usually in our projects, and certainly with Maori, we have chosen the best science team, but now we are in Hawaii, and we will have the two best. But for our home, we would have two rather than one, so that we can ensure that we have double science background when we come to Hawaii because of the nature power of our resource here. Eason is also a partner of ours working with Maui. Their background is not only in production, but transmission, which I think is very important because in Hawaii we don't have any competition at all on transmission. We just have the helco. So perhaps it's time to bring in others that can assist us. Here's, we're going to run through some of our projects in New Zealand. We have been there for 11 years. We have been working with Maui in production of energy the last 5-6 years. The Te Ahi o Maui project, we own with our native partners. It is native to native, so we are owners of that. And we have facilitated them securing an excellent deal, and now we're working with them to put up geothermal, do some drilling on their lands. Waka Puaka is now in this, being tested. We've looked at hydro, we've looked at wind, so we're assessing. We're doing exploration and assessment there. Waipukumahana comes to us just at this time. They're in the Maui Land Court preparing for their own development project, and they invite us to come in now, not only as a technical partner, but to discuss its ownership. And finally, the Taheke block, we're going to take a look at that. We just put in our first well for Taheke. We had tested looking for 50 megawatts. We find 70 megawatts plus. So we are actually now beginning our drilling with them. These are all Maori trusts. We work with native peoples. That is why we're created. Here in Hawaii, we will work with everyone because in Hawaii, the owners of the geothermal resource are the public and the native. Geothermal in Hawaii is an asset of the public trust. It belongs to the public and the native Hawaiian with a small n, i.e. our Hawaiian homestead community. An issue arises now as to whether or not the ownership of geothermal beneath Hawaiian homelands, is that in the Ceded Land Trust or is it in the DHHL Trust? I encourage the clarification of this question, either way you look at it. This is a Hawaiian resource, and we're going to take a look at some of the benefits, and many of them could help, not only the public, but certainly support the Hawaiian Homestead Program, which is farming, which is pastoral, and which is small business development. Let's take a look at this. This is our last, this is actually supposed to be green grass. This is the last bore we put in for the Taheke Maoris. We went in August of 2010. We put it right in the heart of the lambing fields. The sheep are brought here when it's time to give birth. We have no worry with our projects. We do pastoral. You can do projects with sheep, with cattle, with deer. You cannot do pig, but you can do those three. Here, we have all the lambs being born. We have no toxic discharge, either in the air or on the land. New technology was developed in the last 30 years, so we're not dealing with the same situation we had 25 years ago. But we have to ensure that whatever technology comes to Hawaii is clean. That's our job. Yours and mine both. Here's some other shots of this is our site that we own. This well was put in by the Crown. It lay dormant all these years until Maui brought their claims to the Waitangi Tribunal and won. When they uncapped this bore, steam for 15 megawatts came out. We're drilling, but we will bring this to production from the colonial period, and we will begin in this way at Kauerau. What is our development model? Let's take a look at that, because this is what makes us different from many other people. The native-to-native development model was created over a period of several years, and it came out of an effort that started at the United Nations when I was up there as a diplomat. What happened was the UN began to look at the issue of climate change and also to look at the issue of peak oil, that the world has passed the time for the production of oil. And what came out of this effort was the identification of renewable resources across the world that could be developed for clean energy so that we could stop our consumption of fossil fuel. which is not only costly but toxifying our own homeland. So we looked at this and we took human rights and we put them into aggregations. All of our human rights relating to culture in one pot. All of our human rights relating to social development, such as the right to employment, the right to education, put that in one. What about our rights to economic development, to participate in development, to set criteria and impose restrictions? All these things we put together. There's about 25 indigenous experts globally that work on this effort. At a certain point, we separated so that models could be developed for the Pacific. They would be different for Africa and different for Asia. Helping in this task were a handful of Hawaiians who came forward to work with me on this model because I am not a businesswoman. I'm a human rights advocate. So I thank my Hawaiian brothers and sisters for helping put together this model. We took it to New Zealand 11 years ago. Dame Tiata, the Maori Queen, asked us, will you begin here? But you don't say no to the Queen. That is how we started, and we've been there ever since. We didn't want to repeat what happened in Hawaii. We wanted to try and be Pono ourselves. So we tried to look for what could this mean when it came to geothermal development. We need to have better policies for energy. We disagree with the current way that energy has been developed. Public trust resources are developed by the trustee to bring a primary benefit to the beneficiaries. That means the trustee, which is the state, should a long time ago have thought about how they were going to be involved in energy for our state security. They should have inventoried our renewable resources, but it was never done. So we need to look at changes in policy. But we also need to have an open and transparent development process. Amen. So we can start to cook out with the community first. Right. We're the ones that own it. Let's talk with our people. So we decided that because of what had happened here, we had to make the commitment going in. No violation of cultural rights and no violation of the environmental integrity of our homelands. And finally, look for ways to create opportunity so the community can benefit. Whenever you have mega development that comes to your community, whether it is hydro, a dam, geothermal, whatever it is, you look at the benefit and who is getting it. Who are those developers? Who are those bringing the technology?
Yeah, right.
What is the benefit? Money, revenue, business opportunity is one of the things they get. And what are they creating? Energy. And with geothermal, it is energy for steam. It is energy for electricity. Money, energy, opportunity. These benefits must come to the people and not continue to develop geothermal energy as though it's an asset that belongs to private sector. It does not.
Yes.
It does not.
Yes.
When we took the human rights from the United Nations Declaration and we put it into 4 different pots, it was separated by culture, environment, social, and economic. And so we created these requirements in our projects, that it must be culturally appropriate. It must be environmentally green and sustainable. It must be socially responsible. And it must be economically sensible. Good tag words, but what does it mean? Well, one thing that it means in terms of what is culturally appropriate, in the Declaration it says that indigenous peoples have a right to participate directly in the development of their resources. Therefore, we believe that whenever there is development of geothermal or any other renewable resource, Native people have to be involved as development partners and in a significant way. We take the cultural protections we have. 25 years ago, we had to go to court. Our right to worship the Kua wasn't being acknowledged. Yes. Our right to gather was being criminalized. Let's take those wins. We won at the court. Then we went to the state legislature. We changed the definition of environmental impact in our state. Now we look at the negative impact on the cultural environment, as well as the biological environment. Let's take those that we have and turn them into restrictions and protections for the development of our resources. How do we proceed? You put culture first. Every cultural resource of Native peoples must be identified, and we are committed to preserving it. Maybe it is a cultural resource that human beings made. Maybe it is archaeological. If it is, protect it. If it is not made by human beings and it was made by the Creator, perhaps it is a mountain or a sacred spring. If it is a cultural resource, protect it. Maybe it is something that is tangible. You can touch it, you can feel it. Protect it. And if it is not tangible and it is intangible, if it is relating to the hula, if it is relating to the chant or the puli, protect it. All cultural resources, respect and protect them. Use cultural vehicles that we have now. Cultural mapping. You begin your project, you first put down your cultural resources, work with your local community, map it first. And when that is done, you bring in your people from your community at the local level to consult you. Those who worship will know where the sites are. Keep it quiet. There isn't any reason to disclose the location of sacred burials, of sacred places of worship. Our job is to protect it, not to publicize it, but maintain and preserve it.
That's right.
When all of this work has been done, then we can go to step number 4, which is design the project footprint. But you do not design the project and then say, uh-oh, we have a problem. What are we going to do to get rid of this burial site? Let us do the culture first, and then let us design the project. And where there's an intersect, we have to look to mitigate the damage or alter the planning. If you do it the other way around, you're making a mistake. Native people will strike you. Environmentally sustainable means that we look honestly at where we are in Hawaii. We are the ones that consume fossil fuel. Every time we drive our car, every time we throw the light switch, we know electricity comes from fossil fuel. On the big island we see now, we cannot eat the fish from 2/3 of our island. You can fish, but you better not eat it because of ciguatera, non-point pollution, 80% of which is oil and gas. Hard to be a Hawaiian and talk about aloha aina and not talk about our own dependency on fossil fuel and how we ourselves are contributing to the greenhouse gas emissions of Hawaii. We are all responsible for this footprint, so we all have to work on addressing it. Fossil fuel costs are going up. It is volatile and unpredictable. I am fearful for Hawaii. Did you know that in the Western Hemisphere, when governments gather to talk about the impending energy crisis, they refer to Hawaii as the miner's canary? Hawaii will be the first place in the Western Hemisphere that will show the breakdown of government, the inability to provide jobs, and hunger, because cost of energy is one side of the coin and the other side is cost of food, and you see it every time you shop. So we have to prepare for oil prices reaching $200 a barrel. And the way we do it is by supporting energy self-sufficiency for each and every one of our islands. That is the IDG way. For each and every one of our islands. So we say, how can we help Molokai to be energy self-sufficient? How can we help Lanai? How can we help Oahu? We cannot say, let's take Lanai and Molokai and turn them into an industrial wind center for Oahu. What about their energy self-sufficiency? So we believe that all islands need to be facilitated. We may have to move energy from one to another, but let us begin with a commitment for every island to be included in a plan for self-sufficiency. Socially responsible means, number one, you're environmentally and culturally responsible. But socially responsible means that you bring a benefit to the whole community that, in this case, owns that resource. Socially responsible means that you look for a way to share equitably and favorably in the benefit that comes from the development of the resource. So benefit sharing is a part of development. It's a necessary part. And we're saying it has to be a requirement. We're saying to the state, impose a new policy, require that when state-owned assets are developed, require that the development captains bring in a package for the people. One thing it has to mean is very reasonable cost to ratepayers. Who owns the resource in Hawaii? The public and the native. They are the ratepayers. They also happen to be the taxpayers. They also are the beneficiaries of the trust. And one thing I want you to remember is that you also are the voters. We need policy change and facilitation from those at the legislature, people who are helping us, like Senator Michael Gabbard, Senator Pohai Ryan. If they will not, we will use our power to bring in those that will. Revenue streams for the state trustee. When you look at our system in the state, we're developing geothermal, 10% is going for royalties. 90% is going. If the state were involved and set a priority as a partner and as a true trustee using a fiduciary obligation, we would have more revenues coming into the state. And that is why we call upon the state to come forward. You can talk all you want about public-private partnerships. Time to stop the waha and the bala'awing, and let's move forward. Let's take a look at those community benefits and how we put together an approach here for Hawaii, and we've already begun to use it with others who are Polynesian. My experience is that benefit depends on the community, the culture, the environment. It's great to say that you can have a benefit for agriculture, but if you're in a desert with no soil, obviously it doesn't match you. In Hawaii, we are so blessed because in Hawaii, we have many possibilities. The three benefits that come from mega development: revenue money, opportunity for business and employment, and electricity and steam. Our projects, and we put this in writing, for 50 megawatts, in our projects we would create a trust, a community trust, and we put in 2% of gross every year. So for 50 megawatt plants, the community trust gets 1.25 million every year for 50 years for a total of $63 million. You don't give uniforms for the baseball team. You give an allocation of revenue because in every community we need to keep cans on the shelf at the food bank. We need to help elderly and youth programs. We need to share that revenue with those who are not directly involved in it. We also need to ensure that there's going to be socially responsible employment. So job training opportunities need to be not only a commitment when you speak publicly, but you have to put it in writing in the development agreement. And the way you make sure it comes online is you build in an on-the-job training program so that local people can access that, can acquire the skills, and when the job is posted, they have a fair chance of getting it. The other thing you do is you make sure that you're building the capacity in that local community to take the upper level jobs, and you do that by providing scholarships. I think in New Zealand we go the first 6 or 7 years at 20,000 US. When we first talked with them in New Zealand about the jobs, one of the partners, potential partners, we were talking about, you want the jobs? I said, yeah, we want the jobs for the local community and the Maori people. He said, sure, I think we could agree to that. That's an easy one. Let's agree to that. He said, y'all don't have any geothermal engineers, do you? There isn't a single Maori geothermal engineer, is there? I told him, no, there isn't, but there will be in 6 years, because the next thing you're going to agree to is a scholarship program. That's why we set it up with Dr. Samuel in Auckland. The fact that someone comes and develops for 50 years doesn't mean you wait that long to get jobs for your community, for goodness sakes. Let's get those jobs online as quickly as we can. Another thing that we believe, we very much support the public-private partnership, because the state has no money. The state does not have a background in developing geothermal energy, and it hasn't for over 30 years. They don't have the science or the technical background. They don't have those connections. IDG does. We're happy to bring it forward. We want to use the public-private partnership to assist the state in moving forward in an appropriate way with the development of geothermal. That's it. When the first term ends, we welcome private sector to leave so that the entire plant can be turned over to the state trustee as a publicly owned utility. When we close our first term with Maui, with all of our needed people, if it's 40 years or 50, all the partners come to help them learn, to help them move. But at the end of the first term, private sector is welcome to leave, and the entire project goes to Maui. Here, our trustee is the state of Hawaii, so we will support publicly owned utilities. And the state then will have the ability to hire who they want to hire for operation and maintenance. Let those who want to come in to compete, you call them in. But we cannot support the privatization forever of publicly owned resources. We cannot do that. Let's help our state trustee increase the capacity. On Oahu, we have so much great need, but we have only one publicly owned utility, which is the H-Power waste-to-energy plant. We don't have to just have that. We can have other publicly owned utilities as well. You have steam and energy that comes from geothermal. So you want a benefit for that, direct benefit for the community. We have found a way to take some of that steam, to take some of that energy, and to share it with others in the community, in the vicinity of the development, so that we can generate small business. Mega development usually just benefits 3 people. The one that's producing the energy, the producer. The one that's bringing all together, the developer, the investors. Well, what about small business? A big benefit goes to transmission, to HELCO, but what about everyone else? Well, we have to develop that opportunity. We have to take the steam and put it into appropriate agricultural uses. We're going to look at some of them. We have to take the energy, electricity, and make it available through industrial, renewable energy, industrial parks, so that geothermal will develop by helping others. We don't have a single place in Hawaii that's a renewable energy development park. We don't have a single one. Every windmill we bring in, every turbine, every solar panel, all imported from the continent, all by fossil fuel. But we need to create industrial places so that we can provide energy at a discounted rate to help those other ones coming up. And we also need to use that to develop and strengthen our ability to protect our food sources, agriculture, food applications, and health and wellness application. Everybody wants to come to Hawaii, go and skiing. That has degraded our environment. We go to many places now where we have always gone to sweat and pray on Big Island. Cannot. There's baby diapers there. There's empty Coke cans. There's broken bottles. If we're going to have others want to benefit from our sweat, from our steam, it's best to create a spa so that we can control the negative impact on our environment that the native people worship and steam in the appropriate way. It is our culture. For others, let us accommodate health and wellness development so that everyone can benefit in a culturally appropriate way. Here's a sample of an industrial park. I like to see this happen here in Hawaii, and certainly we could have accommodated it on the Big Island in Puna. And thanks to Richard and our farmer group, we now see that we cannot just focus on turbines and solar panels, but we need to have in the industrial park some way to create fertilizer for our farmers. Hydrogen, ammonia are the byproducts of geothermal development. they're also components for fertilizer. Today, you look at the statistics, Hawaii farmers are being driven out of business, cannot pay the fertilizer and the energy costs, and it's a lot cheaper to grow weeds for biomass. Why are we doing this? We must protect our food security. So we need to accommodate some uses for agriculture. Timber drying, we have it on the Big Island. It is one of our industry. Timber dries at 160 degrees. When that steam comes through, there is still energy left because food dries at 80 degrees. So you look at a place like Puna, where it's all papaya. There was a perfect opportunity to set up drying facilities. Dry papaya is at $27 a pound, 25 to 27. We're throwing out tons of papaya in Puna. We can't give it to the pig farmers. We can't process it. Now we could if we applied some thinking and planning to incorporate small business development. Agriculture, aquaponics, all these things are in the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act to benefit our homesteaders, and they're also the purpose for the Department of Land and Natural Resources. This is why we're saying to the state, prioritize first the development of renewable energy on your state lands. Do not prioritize the development on private lands, but on our state lands, because these are our state resources. Support food. And here, Blue Lagoon in Iceland, this used to be a toxic sump. When they cleaned it up, they turned it into a spa area. And they have found that the alkaline water in the Blue Lagoon can heal skin diseases. And this is why now many people from the world fly to Iceland so that they can participate in this type of healing, naturopathic healing approach. We need to look at this and consider it ourselves for Hawaii. What is our geothermal history in Hawaii? Everybody goes back to the fight we had 30 years ago, but that is not where geothermal energy began. Geothermal energy began in the early 1880s when King Kalakaua was regent of the independent nation of Hawaii. And he was also a great inventor, Kalakaua. He became fascinated with the idea of electricity and how it could be transmitted. And what caught his interest was the telegraph. Electricity had been created. And Edison at the time was working on there was a great world conference. It was being sponsored in New York. And he was working on the first grid in the United States. It was New York City. But he had developed understanding of electricity, but someone else, Morse and others, learned that you could send it through a wire and communicate. And this caught Kalakaua's interest, and he wanted to go to Big Island, somehow see how energy could be changed to electricity and send in a wire to the palace. That was his goal. When he went to see Tom Edison in 1881, Edison told him someday it will happen, but likely not in our lifetime. Well, it's happening in your and my lifetime, and that's why we need to prepare for it. What happened 30 years ago was not something that was a historical event. What happened 30 years ago was a lesson that everyone should learn from, a lesson that is still very appropriate and applicable today. People came to Big Island. They did not include the community in the choice of the site. They went to the caldera, the most sacred place. And when they got kicked out of there, they went to the sacred forest. They didn't acknowledge culture. They didn't acknowledge right to worship God. When Auntie Emily went to pick flowers in the forest, she was arrested. They criminalized the right to gather. They didn't provide any kind of access. They brought in cheap, filthy technology that was toxic. And during the exploration stage, because they did not test the resource and match it to the technology, they made a deal in a boardroom to bring in this technology. You do not develop in that way. You do not choose your technology until you have tested your resource. You cannot second guess Kanaloa in the ocean. Kanaloa you cannot. And you cannot second guess Pele on the land. It is best to go there and see how she is, and then match the technology. There wasn't any benefit for those who own geothermal, the public and the native, not a single thing. And there was no vision for our future, for our people's future, for our public future, for our state's energy security. You're going to do development like this, the native people will prevent it. If this approach is taken again, the same will happen. I, for one, live in a big island. I live in Puna. We're not going to allow cheap and filthy technology. We're not going to allow people to come and develop our resources and not share with the native and the public. So this is the past. Let's turn the page on it. Let's look at how we can address it. And you know, the thing is that we are the most energy insecure state in the Union. We are the most food insecure state in the Union. And we are the miner's canary for the Western Hemisphere. It will hit us first. But we have great, great bounty and blessing. We have so much renewable energy resources here that we can let go of fossil fuel. Few places in the world have blessings such as we. In future years, we will see disruption of government and bloodshed, just as we have seen in the last generation over fights for oil. We will be spared that if we work collectively under a new vision for Hawaii, if we develop what the Akua has given to us in sustainable and responsible ways. So we went to the legislature and we told them this. We need to address our energy crisis. We're furloughing our children's education. We're laying off everybody in Historic Preservation Division and everywhere else in the state. We cannot pay them. Our state is on the verge of bankruptcy. Why? Because $7 billion go out every year to bring in toxic fossil fuel. Big Island alone pay $1 billion every year. We need that money here to fund our renewable energy development and strengthen our own economy. We cannot be exporting what little money we have. We need it here. In Hawaii, on Hawaii Island, 20% of our electricity comes from geothermal. Has been for 17 years. You folks on Oahu, I don't know why you folks are all way. Our bill is so high. Hey, move to Big Island. Pay 43 cents a kilowatt hour. We have 20% of our energy coming from geothermal for 17 years. But we still get billed the price of oil. Because years ago, a contract was made between the ORMAT, BBG, and HELCO, and they decided that all the savings from switching from oil to geothermal, that all that savings they were going to divide among them. Right. And never a cent for the ratepayers. I disagree with that, not the IDG, I disagree. I went to the legislature, I gave testimony on this. 2 senators, Dela Cruz and Solomon from Big Island, joined me. We're requesting the AG investigate the prices we are paying. We can share revenues, but we insist that the local community get a share of the benefit. There's 15 more years left on the first contract for 30 megawatts for Big Island. I would not have our people pay the price of oil for 20%. We want what is fair, and we want to bring it down. And I want to acknowledge and thank Scott Seal from HELCO, because just in the last month, HELCO came forward and said, you know, we didn't know 25 years ago cost of oil was going to go up like this. HELCO will agree to renegotiate and bring the price down. So we're just going to work on the last one. ORMAT, we still want the price coming down. So we need to address energy crisis. We need to address fiscal crisis. The state just cannot put a lot of money into this. The state doesn't have the capital. That means private sector. We're calling upon investment funds to come in. Do we have interest in investment? Yes, we do. But we're hoping to give the first share to local investors. Because if you give it to those of the continent and our international partners, benefit goes out of the state. We need to try to keep the $7 billion inside the state. So we need to look for different sources of income. And this is why we're talking with OHA. OHA is the only agency in the state that has any money. DHHL has some land, might have some geothermal, but they have no money to develop it. They are the Native Hawaiian. OHA is a trustee in charge of Native Hawaiian. So OHA, I'd like to see some of that $400 million be put into renewable energy development for your beneficiaries on the homestead. And I'd like to point out, OHA, how many years you received money? OHA, 17 years. They have received money from Ormat Geothermal, millions of dollars OHA has received. Now it's time for them to reinvest so that we can find the geothermal on Hawaiian homelands. New policy. We think that the state has to look at its trust obligation. We have to have the state acting as a trustee for all the beneficiaries and the state receiving back some of these revenues. And we also believe that there needs to be a component, a requirement of development to bring the benefits back. The state trustee has to set that policy, and the state trustee has to ensure that it is implemented. The state has the power and authority, not private sector who is controlling transmission and development. No, the state of Hawaii. And policy comes from our elected officials. We work with them in our legislature, not through executive agreements that Linda Lingle tied up years ago with Bush. You can't have a valid state policy based on executive agreements. That is not the way it works. Policy is set by the elected officials, and we're going to back that up and make that change. Here's some maps that I wanted to show because the data we have in Hawaii is very old. It's 30 years old. There hasn't been new and updated testing. But based on the projections we have, there's some areas that have been identified. This area right here is Hulupalakua, Kahikinui. Hulupalakua is private land owned by the Dillingham family. Big name from our colonial past.
Yes, yes.
But if you look Mauka, what land is there? DLNR land and DHHL land. Why can we not look there? Here, this area is Hana, Mauka. But as you know, there's very little opportunity for transmission there. And most of the consumptive need is here on Maui. Here is Maui development, not here. We don't really have ability to transmit large amounts. Speaking as a Hana girl, I'd much rather see the Kahikinui area move first.
Yes,
right. Here is the big island. This is what the general data showed. The long one that is oblong is the East Rift Zone. This is at South Point. Now, some of this data initially indicated that it was closer to Kalai, which is Hawaiian homelands. The recent data pushes it back Mauka. That area is not Hawaiian homelands, but this is why we need monies from OHA to really do testing and find out where is the resource. Is it at Kalai or is it further in the back? The small little circle there is Mount Hualalai. It is identified as a resource area. Mauna Hualalai is owned by the Vietnamese Schools Fish Estate. They work and are working, I think, with Ormat to put forward a proposal. Hawaiian civic clubs in the county indicate that they will not support development of the Mauna. We're saying, look at the state lands surrounding Hualalai and the ground. Stay away from the mountains, stay away from it. And look to develop state lands at the base of it. But here are some of the projections as to where locations are. And I just want to qualify this, and this is not a disclaimer. But this data is old, and it wasn't gathered with the best technology, and that's the first step in geothermal development. So we're looking at where we think geothermal is, but we have a lot of work to find out where it really is. And it's not just the work of the DLNR. It will be the work of both state trustees for the native, DHHL and OHA both, Your trustees are going to need to get involved in this thing. I'm so happy DHHL put together a Geothermal Development Committee. So we went to see our folks at the legislature that can see can see also Pohai was there. We had a 3-hour session, and I'm happy to tell you that there is great support for this. And many legislators have come forward saying, we understand, we're trustees. We're going to change the face of geothermal development. So we're looking for a new approach. This is what we're saying we need. Geothermal should be recognized as a primary base load power source for our state. We need to use state energy assets on priority. The LNR can determine where the geothermal subzones are. Great. Let's look at the state lands to develop something for the public and the Native Hawaiian. We're saying that the state needs to get involved in setting some policy controls for electricity transmission in the public interest.
Yes.
We cannot have a monopoly system anymore. We need to have the state looking for quality control. We need to ensure that whenever there's a deal, whether it's geothermal or anything else, ratepayers should get a benefit. The federal purple law, which has applied for many years, it is enforced by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. The law requires, in writing, that ratepayers receive a fair and reasonable charge and that they receive a share of avoided costs. That's what the federal law says. I don't really care that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission doesn't come to Hawaii. I will have that law enforced. And that is why I'm saying I don't care that the contract was made 20 years ago. We never got the benefit, and we will have it now for the next 15 years. So, community benefit package, we're going to have to require it.
Yes.
Some people have said to the IDG, go in the legislature, insist on your way. I'm saying no. I'm saying let's go to the legislature and insist on a benefit package. We put this together because we're looking at what we would like to see move for Hawaiian homesteaders and others. But we should be open to others who come who are competitors. Maybe you have a good idea for a benefit package. Let me see it. I'm putting up the best one I have. What about you? Do you have one? We don't have to say, no, it's going to be this way or the highway. Let private sector business work with the government. Let's look to see what makes sense in what location and for which beneficiary. We can do that. We have the capacity. And finally, at the end, let all of the partners come in, that they will support the formation of a state-owned public utility. This is what is Pono. These types of requirements we already impose upon ourselves. It is part of the business model. All those that we work with agree to this. It took us many years to put together our first deal for Maui because when people came there, they just said, what? You want us to give steam to Maui? You want us to help them have small business and give them 2% of gross in cash every year, $1.25 million? They just laughed at us and said, you know what? You don't know how geothermal is developed here in New Zealand and elsewhere in the world. We don't develop like that. So we just got up and laughed, shook their hand, and said, you're right, you don't develop like that. And that is why you cannot be a development partner for these Maui resources, because we don't work with partners that don't agree to this. A few walked out the door, but when they saw the projects moving forward, they came back later and said, you know what, we think we can work with it. You know, you can make a good profit, hundreds of millions of dollars. You don't have to gouge the people. You don't have to prevent small business or food security from being achieved. We have a different proposal, and we're set on it.
Yes.
We have answered the HELCO, and we're moving forward. We are working with some public agencies. We've talked with DHHL, OHA, Bill down at the DLNR, kind of waiting for this Public Land Development Corporation. They don't have a PO'o yet, but we're talking with the state, and we're also working with private landowners in Puna because we wish to move forward. Somebody asked me, you know, they were very disappointed to see me doing this. And they said, you know, Mininani, 30 years ago, you led the anti-geothermal. You walked with the kupunas that got arrested. I was her attorney. A lot of people's names come up, Kalikapu, all this. They never got arrested. Who got arrested was a handful of Hawaiian women kupunas led by Palikapu's mother, the kupuna of Kalakwe, Hawaii. I walked with them. I was their attorney. I bailed them out. I did that because I believe in Aloha Aina and because our sacred practices were trampled upon. Today, I am supporting clean, sustainable development of Hawaiian-owned resources. Just as I have fought always for our lands and territories, now we will fight for our share of the development of our ceded land resources. And this time, there's no division between the public and the native. There's no reason to look at the blood quantum because we are all beneficiaries. And if it should turn out that Hawaiian homelands own their own resource, then we will work with them in the native to native way. It is upon us to ensure Hawaii's energy future. Every one of us, whether you're a native or not. And we have the ability and the leadership in our House and Senate to do it. Will I look for leadership upstairs? I have no time to go up there. I have good senators and members of the House ready to go. We need community support. Would you consider joining us?